Hello and welcome back to the channel. And today I thought once more we'd look at the results of the classic car auction held over the weekend, Saturday the 25th, Sunday the 26th of January at Anglia Car Auctions in Kings Lynn. So let's go and have a look and see what the results were. The Triumph 2500S estate car, £8,640. Now that was a no reserve car. So that's achieved not a bad price actually. Particularly when you're thinking of today's market. So let's go and have a look a bit more at it and see what we make of it all. The Mark II Triumph 2500 was introduced in 1969 and it ran through, I think, until about 1977. And of course, this is a 2500S, which was introduced in 1975. Of course, they'd done away with the petrol injection by this time, and they'd gone on to twin Stromberg carburetors or twin SUs. Of course, there was the S and there was the TC models. The S, as I said, being introduced in 1975. Of course, the interesting thing about these is that this is an estate, as you see. Now, the Mark I estate car and the Mark I saloon were exactly the same size. The estate variant was built by Car Bodies in Coventry. Now, Car Bodies worked on lots of different cars, but most notably, you may remember them as being the Austin FX for London taxis. When the Mark II was introduced and the estate version was actually 5 inches smaller than the saloon. And the reason being that it was carried over from the Mark I estate, and that was built again by Car Bodies. This looks rather nice, I think, and I like the wheels, like the TC wheels, the sporty wheels like they had on the Sprints. Looks very smart. Let's have a look a bit more at some of the pictures. Well, it certainly looks to be all there, doesn't it? I mean, there doesn't look to be a great deal wrong with it. Looks quite a smart machine. Automatic, as you see, and the mileage appears to be showing 45,000. So what do we actually know about it? Described by the vendor as his late father's pride and joy. Registered to him since 1979. So the mileage is recorded as showing 45,385. So if that's genuine, that's not very much at all, is it? And it looks rather a nice, pleasing and useful car. And then 1993 XJS 5.3. That's not a bad result. In today's market, that's quite a good result. And I'll tell you why. Anyway, we'll take a quick glance at it. I was interested to see how this one got on. Like mine, it's the facelifted version, introduced in 92. And again, what's interesting to know, this is registered as a 93, and it's got the 5.3 V12. When in May 92, they actually brought out the 6-litre V12. So again, as I say, it's like mine because it's got the chrome bumpers, as opposed to like the celebration models with all like mainly the colour-coded bumpers. I prefer mine actually. I think the colour, let's have a look and see. Difficult to tell in this light. I think that's possibly Kingfisher blue. But yeah, lots of good aspects on this one. Okay, so this was apparently a Category C damaged vehicle, insurance loss in 1999. It was professionally repaired, it was stored for 20 years and not used. A renovation was carried out in 2024, costing £6,700. It had a full service, it had the oils and filters replaced, the brakes were done, including the discs, the pads, and new handbrake pads. The rear axle was removed, new pin kit, rear trailing arms done. There was work on the fuel system, fuel tank removed, cleaned, new pump and filter, flushed out feed and return lines, Morelli injection module replaced, 12 fuel injectors fitted, along with 12 spark plugs and a new distributor cap, rotor amp and injection leads done. Now that's money in the bank, because just to change the 12 spark plugs for an experienced mechanic, I understand you could expect it to take around about 9 hours, because they are so difficult to get at and so much stuff has to be removed. Looking at this vehicle just purely on the basis of the engine alone, It's got a guaranteed mileage of 48,000 miles, and it's had all that work done. So you would expect it should be offering some good service, and yeah, value for money, in my opinion, a good buy. I think that its price reflects all the work that's gone into that engine. And I think when I saw the original estimate, I was tempted myself actually, thinking it's worth that for the price of the engine alone. So I think that somebody's seen the opportunity of it, and I think that's a good result for somebody. And I think for the buyer, I think they possibly have a bit of peace of mind knowing that all that work's been done. So I think that's been quite a wise buy, actually. The 1965 Mercedes Heckfloss there. There's been a few of them on the market recently. So it looks like black with a red interior. £9,500. I think that's achieved a very good and high price, actually, I think. The Arrows Sunbeam Alpine Coupe, £3,132. That's quite cheap. The Morris Thousand Traveller, another cheap looking buy, and the woodwork looks pretty decent. Now the Skoda Felicia Fun pickup, £3,888. That seems quite cheap to me. The Capri there, 8,700 again. That seems quite cheap considering the Capri market. The Panther remains available. Nobody seems to want them, do they? So that will actually have probably the 2.3 litre Vauxhall engine. And it's got the fiberglass body, which is unusual for Panther. And I think it's the only Panther that they ever built with a fiberglass body. Of course, when the Callister came out, it reverted to the rest of the cars, and they were built out of aluminium. Lovely cars. Bernie Winters, who was a comedy duo back in the 70s, Mike and Bernie Winters, two brothers. Bernie Winters used to own one of those, and he used to have his big Saint Bernard dog, Schnorbitz, I think they called it. He used to sit in it for a television programme. But they deserve better. The prices are quite cheap for them at the moment, and I think it's probably because a lot of people now in today's generation possibly don't know about Panther. They don't know the heritage. They don't know what a nice car they are, and perhaps the retro styling doesn't appeal to them. I don't know, but yeah, that's to me at £6,000. That seems like a cheap car. Right, a 1969 Jaguar 420G. £4,968. Well, that seems a lot of car for the money. Obviously, there can be a lot of work with these cars. Let's have a look at it in a bit more detail. The Mark 10 Jaguar, which is basically what this car is. I know it's a 420G, but basically it's a Mark 10 Jaguar. And it was introduced in 1961 and it ran all the way through until 1970. Now, in 1961, when it was introduced, it had a 3.8 litre engine carried over from the E-Type. It had triple carburetors. And in 1964, they introduced the 4.2 litre engine, although the 3.8 remained available until 1965. In 1966, the model was renamed and it became the 420G. Obviously, it had the 4.2 litre engine with the triple SU carburetors. And the main identifying features between the Mark 10 and the 420G were the 420G had this centre division on the grille. It gained the side repeater flashes, and it had a chrome strip which ran the full length of the car. Of course, other features were introduced. It was possible to have the car available in a two-tone paint finish. The chrome strip could be removed, and the 420 saw further changes to the interior. The clock was now moved to the centre of the dashboard, and the top of the dashboard was padded for safety. The centre panels of the leather seats gained perforations in the leather, and you could now also option air conditioning as a feature if you wished. And the options of transmission came as a 3-speed automatic or a 4-speed manual with overdrive. Now, the platform itself, the Mark 10 platform, although it was in elongated form, formed the basis for the Daimler DS420 limousine, and that ran through all the way until 1992. I remember back in the 80s, there was a very well-known Jaguar specialist, Greg Hinton, and I believe he ran a business called Classic Cars of Coventry, which later became Leaping Cats, I think. And I remember him featuring in Practical Classics and various magazines at the time. And the big thing that was prominent at the time was he was building Mark 10 Jaguar convertibles. And I think 12 were built in total. They mainly went to Europe and to America, but there were fantastic conversions, really luxurious, sort of like compared at the time alongside a Corniche. But they really gained a reputation, this company, for building cars. And I think Greg used to also race Jaguars, and he raced a lot in the USA as well. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, but very well known and very highly respected. And another bit of trivia for you. Apparently, when Raiders of the Lost Ark was made, Steven Spielberg called upon Greg Hinton and his team to produce two 1936-37 Mercedes staff cars, Nazi staff cars. And they built these two replicas. I think they were built using a Mark 9 Jaguar chassis with a Mark 5 body. And they had a very limited time in which to build them, and they worked around the clock to produce them. And they were capable of travelling at 120 miles an hour for the car chase scenes, apparently. And I understand that Greg actually drove the cars out to Tunisia for filming for them. The Mark 10, the 420G Jaguar, I think it was one of the widest Jaguar production vehicles ever built. And of course, they look it, don't they? They're a big machine, very luxurious. A bit overshadowed by the introduction of the E-Type when it came out, with them coming out at a similar time. They didn't get as much sort of the limelight, if you like, as maybe they should have done at a launch. Yeah, it looks a fairly sound car. It looks as though it needs a little bit of work here and there, which I suppose is only to be expected. And I dare say that once you start on it, you're going to find more work to do. But it looks a very presentable looking car, doesn't it? And I think it's a lot of car for the money. I think it's probably priced about right because, I think once you start on it, there could be a lot more work to put into it. I mean, imagine how much paint it's going to need with it being such a big car, and that in itself won't be cheap. So I think it's probably come out at about the right sort of price. But yeah, very nice car. Right, moving on. 1970 Triumph Spitfire Mark III, 11,664. That seems a good result. A little Clio Gordini, that's a nice little motor. Quite like them. £2005 Ford Streetcar Winter Edition, so it's the convertible. £2,060. That seems quite cheap. Let's have a quick glance at that. It's a rare car. I mean, even some of the early cars now are probably disappeared because of rust, but in convertible format, yeah, very rare. Rare and different. Like a leather interior on it. 49,000 miles. Pininfarina. Yeah, that's. I think that's a good, cheap fun motoring. Celica there seems cheap. I think at the moment they are quite cheap, those Celicas. If you can find a good one and not pay too much for it, I don't think you'd be doing too badly. And the Spitfire there just doesn't look right with those wheels, in my opinion. I'd have to change them. They just don't look right at all. The Audi Quattro, £2,376. Yeah, and that's about right, actually. I was thinking probably it would be more on the lower estimate of it, the 2.5. Not because it's not worth more, because they're lovely cars. It's just because they're so big and expensive, possibly to run. Frighten a lot of people off. But lovely cars nonetheless. But we'll have a look a bit more at that, see what we can make of it. These are a car I do like very much. I like them both in the version such as this, the Mark 1, and the later Mark 2 with the Rover 75 V8 style grills. And they are the biggest boot on any car I have ever seen. I think literally I was quite amazed. I was looking at one a couple of years ago and opened the boot. I could not believe how much space there was in there. And you could have literally, you could have climbed in and you could have slept in the boot. There was that much space. Marvelous. But I like them. This is the standard wheelbase one, but I like them in the long wheelbase versions as well. Obviously, I believe they're all aluminium, aren't they? I just think I love the design of them, and I just think they're fantastic cars. I think I remember when they brought them out in the motor show, and I think they had one on the stand and it didn't have any paint on, and it was just polished aluminium to sort of basically give the idea of what it was constructed of. Won't be cheap to run, probably cost you a fortune in repairs, but lovely, lovely cars. 159,000 miles. I wouldn't let that put me off either. I would think there'll be plenty of life in it. Apparently, it's got a 5-speed automatic transmission, registered in September '98 with 4 registered keepers, and it's got 159,000 miles on the clock. Apparently, the owner bought it in December 23 from a friend who'd owned it since 2007, and he'd spent over £5,000 on maintenance. It's had the cam belt done at 147,000, so that's got to be good. The vendor has covered 10,000 miles on it, and he spent around a further £3,000 on it. So it's obviously not been lacking in maintenance. It reckons it achieves 25 to 28 miles per gallon. Well, for a 4.2 litre engine, I think that's amazing, isn't it? Saab looks cheap, 1,160 quid. TT Roadster there for 1,800 quid. Another one cheap open top motoring. How long are they going to remain that cheap? You know, Boxster. I like Boxsters. And the Renault 5, 760 quid. That seems cheap. And okay, so we know it's not the turbo, but nonetheless, that's cheap, I think, for a Renault 5. The Bentley Arnage, £8,208. A lot of car for the money. They, to me, now seem to be in the same situation that the Silver Shadows used to be a few years ago. They were always some of the cheapest ones. They're just ranking slightly above the Silver Spirits and Silver Spurs, but they're a lot of car for the money and quite nice. I didn't particularly think that much of them when they came out. I wasn't keen so much on the styling of them, but as they've got older, they've sort of appealed to me a little bit more. The M3 Coupe is a good price. £2,060 for that 1.1L Fiesta. Well, I think they've got a good price for that personally. I can't say I know the Fiesta price market, and I know it's a Mark 1. But even so, I think the colour's called Calypso, memory serves me right. And quite a nice colour, actually. But yeah, seems achieved quite a good price, I think. The escargot for 3.4, that's not a bad result, I don't think. A Saxo VTR there. Yeah, that's interesting at 3,888. An MX5 for 3,780. There's a few of them haven't sold. Oh, the TVR seems cheap at 6,480. And the Cayman for 8.7. I can't say I'm a lover of Caymans. I like Boxsters, but the Cayman doesn't do a lot for me. The MX5 there's not sold. That looks quite a smart looking vehicle. £460 for the little Volvo. That seems like a good buy. And so is the Ford Ranger. That seems like a good result for 4,536. And that Mitsubishi looks a good useful workhorse for its money as well. The Frontera, now they're vanishing from the roads, aren't they? I remember when they brought them out, they had problems with the engines, didn't they? I think I don't know whether it was because there was a problem with running unleaded or something. There was something I can't recall exactly what it was, but there was something was going on with them, and I think that put a bit of a downer on them to start with. But they're a rare car now. 2,268. I think that seems quite cheap for what's another rare car. Interesting buy, that one, I think. See how a quick glance at it. Originally used abroad, believed Germany, only registered in the UK in 1997. 119,000 miles. Yeah. Interesting vehicle. But it is right-hand drive. So it may have been used mainly in Germany, but it is right-hand drive. Yeah, interesting vehicle. Another MX5 that hasn't sold, that's two of them. So that's two Stags, both sold for 4,000 odd pounds roughly. This white one looks a smarter one than the yellow one. A T2 camper there, that's not sold. Marina, £1,160. A 1.8 Marina SDL Super Deluxe. Now, if you're not familiar with Marinas, what I can tell you is that's a 1.8. You can tell it's a 1.8 because of this extra bar on the grille. With it being a Mark 1, if it had been a 1.3, the grille would have gone down like that and it had been in two halves and it would have been painted. So that's how you tell it's a 1.8. And it's still got its original wheel trims and hubcaps. It would have had some chrome strip that went round each of the wheel arches. But like so many of them over the years, they were lost. They were also helped to promote corrosion as well. But yeah, they get a lot of stick to Marinas, and they don't deserve it because they're good cars. The Daimler Double Six VDP automatic. You couldn't get a better model in the day than the Daimler Double Six VDP. So obviously it's got the V12 engine and it's the Vanden model. And you could tell it was the Vanden because of the chrome strip that ran down the side. I believe it was the only model that was fitted with that strip. And I remember these well. We used to have a caravan, and I remember one day on the caravan site, somebody turned up with a touring caravan, and they had like a copper metallic one of these. And it was only a couple of years old, and it was absolutely gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and beautiful, beautiful machines. This is an unusual colour. Apparently, it's amethyst. It's quite a rare colour, and you can see it's got chrome wheels, but they were the ultimate. The Metro looks as though it could do with its hydrogas suspension pumping up. The Moke's cheap though, 6,696. Cosworth remains available. The RS 2000 Mark 1 there, 32,940. Yeah. Nice colour scheme that. Now, the RS 1600i, £27,810. Blimey. Now, that's quite a good result. I like them. I like them more than the look of the XR3. I don't know, it was just the wheels, the colour-coded bumpers, it was the striping. I always thought they were nice. That's a good result, that 27,810. And so is that Toyota Celica, 23,976. I know they're rare, but blimey, that's a good result, is that? MGTF there, looks canny. Camaro there, 14,688. This is one I was interested to see. So it's a 1972 Vanden or Vanden Plas 1300 Princess. £4,428. So yeah, it's about near its lower estimate. Finished in harvest gold, as you see. I like these cars, and I remember when I was looking for my first car, I'd have loved to have owned one of these. My driving instructor couldn't understand why a young lad would want a car like this. I've always been a bit odd, and but they were lovely cars, really luxuriously appointed, like little mini Rolls Royces. I mean, you've got the frontal treatment on it, you've got that grille, and you've got the extra lights on it, Harvest gold, lovely colour for it, and it would have had the olive green leather interior. It looks quite a nice car, this. Very nice indeed. I must say, it was a very tempting machine. Let's have a look at the interior. That's what we really want to see. Now, this is odd because the seats look as though the centre panels are a completely different colour, which they never ever would have been. So either something odd has happened and it's faded, which I don't think that's the case, or somebody's coloured them to please themselves. Unless this was a really extra special order, which I don't believe it was. And they would have it would have been all olive green, and the whole seats would have been the same colour. The seats look in quite nice condition, and as does the dashboard, doesn't look too bad. And it's a manual, it's not an automatic. That's interesting to note. But for a little car, they were so luxuriously appointed. Very fine steering wheel. Yeah, those seats would never have been like that. You've got your picnic tables in the rear. And you've got quite a decent amount of legroom for a small car, haven't you? Again, that's probably down to the fact that it's got the transverse engine. Now, to me, that's a nice car. See if it tells any more in the description. Harvest Gold Princess, registered April 72, showing 50,293 miles. MOT'd until December 25. The car was previously finished in red. Oh, well, that's interesting to know. So it would probably have been damask red. But whoever's done it has gone to the trouble of it being an engine out, because even the engine bay is harvest gold. So that's the way to do it. If you're going to change the colour, everything needs to be out and everything needs to be painted. And they've gone to the trouble of changing the interior as well. Sounds like a heck of a lot of work. I don't think that's a bad price. And back in the 90s, they were selling for about £10,000. The Japanese were snapping them up and they were taking them back to Japan. They couldn't get enough of them. Right, let's move on and look at something else. (2002) MG ZS 180, 6,520 miles, 8,640. Well, that's a good result. It deserves to be. Honda S2000, 15,120. That's about right. And the Integrale there for 64,800. Yeah. The Citroen AX 1.4 GTI. Let's take a quick glance at that one. £11,070. Now, if you recall, at the last auction, I think it was that Anglia Car Auctions had back in November, they had a silver AX GT. And as I said at the time, I haven't seen one of those for years. I'd forgotten all about them. And obviously, that was in 1990. It was an early GT. But this is the GTI, whereas the other one had the carburettor engine. This one had actually got injection, which was introduced in 1991. Now, the mileage on this, I think it said it was 15,968 miles. Wow, that is amazing, isn't it? Got to take a look at the pictures. And I think the last one went for £8,000, if memory serves me right. I think about 45,000 miles, and it went for £8,000. I mean, this is a rare car, and the mileage, unbelievable. And you can see inside the wheel arches. Look at that. Yeah, this has been looked after, hasn't it? You can just tell. That's very nice indeed. 15,969. Look at that. That's you. It's like a new car, isn't it? You couldn't. Oh, that's marvelous. Fantastic. Yeah, lovely, lovely car. A 2011 Peugeot RCZ, 584 miles, £11,880. Let's take a look at that one. I quite like these, and you don't see that many of them around. And what I would say is that I could see these being a future collectible, and in a few years there'll be even less of them. And now is the time to, if you wanted one, to pick up a good one. And what could be a better example than this? 584 miles from new. That's amazing. And look at the interesting registration. My 11, it's a 2011 RCZ. Yeah, quite appropriate. 584 miles, absolutely amazing. Look at those seats. Wow. Yeah, it does show, doesn't it? Very nice. HDI. Obviously, it's the HDI. So it's a diesel, and it tells us it's a 2-litre 16-valve diesel. And he's owned it from new, barely driven it. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And never had an MOT and remains in practically as new condition. Yeah, I think that's right as well. Comes with its invoice for £25,165 and 2 car covers and brand new mats in the boot. Yeah, that's lovely, is that? Very rare to come across something like that. Lancer looks nice. I like them. Four by four Cosworth. A Daimler Majestic left-hand drive, 9,396. That's achieved a good price. And then we've got a 1968 Jaguar 420, not to be confused with the 420G. All right, so that completes the lineup. Well, I hope you've enjoyed it. And once again, I just want to say thanks for joining me. And until next time, take care.